If you find out the difference between how much you need in super to live comfortably versus how much you'll actually end up with, it might scare you. And that is why I make videos like this, because there are ways out there that you can 5x or 10x your super now, and it's easier when you're younger. If you start looking at this sort of stuff when you're like 60 and you retire in 5 years, there's a lot less in terms of options. So if you're watching this, you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, I think this is one you need to watch all the way through. If you're interested in knowing how you can supercharge your portfolio in your self-managed super fund with property, then definitely keep watching. Hey guys, my name's Ravi and welcome back to Personal Finance with Ravi Sharma. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button because I talk about real estate, cryptocurrency, and financial freedom. Something that's not so sexy is probably your super. And for anyone that's international, which is like the 2% of you guys, what we're referring to is your retirement fund, which is the 401k if you're in the US and some other garbage that's called overseas. But the main thing is this is the fund where your employer contributes for as long as you work somewhere, and you hopefully end up with an amount that at 65 or 67, depending on when you retire, is enough money for you to actually retire. And the whole thesis behind this was that the government said, I don't think you could actually do this yourself. So what we're gonna do is create an account where it's almost like forced savings so that you end up in a position where you have some money left over. Because if I leave it to you, you're probably gonna waste it. And look, they wouldn't be wrong, especially with how much we see out there with people buying flashy cars. And I know I'm generalizing here, but smashed Avo, anyone? Lame jokes aside, let's focus on how you can actually build your wealth out in your self-managed super fund. And yes, I'm 31, I turned 32 this year. So why is someone talking about super when they're in their 30s? Well, the reality is the sooner you start, the sooner the compound growth actually kicks in so that your super is actually sizable enough for you to enjoy something from it. I don't want you to end up in a position where you start thinking about this way too late, or worse, you actually go and prioritize this when really you can go and prioritize something else. So let's jump into my whiteboard. All right, let's insert the clickbait title, Simple Strategy to 10x your self-managed super fund. Now, the reality is there are so many people that are gonna watch this video and actually do multiples of the 10x. So I think there's a possibility that you can 20x to 30x your self-managed super fund, comparing it to what you could actually end up with by doing nothing versus taking up this strategy. And no, I'm not talking about crypto, I'm talking about real estate purely. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, and you should be going out there and seeking that help and financial advice when it comes to doing something like this. Touching your super has so much regulation and red tape around it. All I'm doing here is showing you how one asset class could help you achieve your goals further. It doesn't mean this is the only thing you do. It could be a portion of your wealth that is contributed towards property, or for some people, like the clients we have, come to us and say, Ravi, I want to buy property. I know what I want to do, but I need you to actually do it for me. So execution is key. Ideas are shit without it, because that's the reality. Let's jump in. Now, the average super for men at the age of 65 is about 435,000, and for women is about 314,000. Now, the reason for the big difference is because women take some more time off, given that they're going to have kids, and sometimes they're the ones that actually have to stay back and not get back into the workforce. Now, do I agree with that? No, definitely not. But that's just what has happened traditionally. Now, you can look back at your parents, and I know even for my case, my dad was working, but while we were young, mum wasn't working. Now, you can't actually afford that luxury. A lot of people I know require both parents to actually be working right now because it is so expensive here in Australia relative to how much income we actually make. So I suspect over the next 10 to 15 years, this gap between the men and women with their super will start to close up, which is actually a great thing because everyone should be individual. And before I get canceled on YouTube, let's continue with the numbers. Now, when you're looking at your super and you're looking at your situation, you've got to figure out, is your house or the place that you're staying, is it actually paid off? And are you by yourself or are you in a couple? And this could make very big differences in where you end up with your retirement. Now, let me show you some examples. Now, here we've got a single male. The house is actually paid off, and they will end up with an average of 435,000. They might have it in a bank account to earn that income because now they've retired, and they will end up with about 17,400 per year. So that's effectively going, this is my entire super from working for 40, 45 years, and I go and earn that in a term deposit at 4%. That's the cash I make. Now, sure, you could go in and put it into the stock market and things like that, but what I'm focusing here on is to know how much cash am I actually able to use towards my lifestyle and living expenses. At the end of the day, that's what we're concerned by when you retire. As a female, same situation, except the balance is at 314,000, and at 4%, that would be earning about 12,560 a year. So if there was a couple, you would be in a situation where collectively you would have $749,000 earning $29,960 per year. Now, if you take a step back and say, okay, if my house is paid off and I've just retired with my partner and we make about $30,000 a year, that works out to be about $500 to $600 per week. Now that's not bad if your house is paid off. And the reality is that you probably don't want to be touching this actual balance. So what you would be doing is saying, if I want to go on a holiday and I want to travel in my 60s and 70s, I'm gonna now have to save out of the $500 or $600 I make every week. And the reason you don't wanna touch the principal is because as soon as you touch the principal, the income you generate from that actually reduces. And then you start seeing that real tightening of what you can and can't do. Now, where this situation looks okay at the moment is that your house is paid off, so you don't have the ongoing repayments, but you still have things like rates and insurances. So this, I would say, is a good outcome, especially knowing how the average person is retiring at the moment. They probably don't have their house paid off, and they're probably having to rely on the pension for some of that income. In this case, the whole idea behind financial freedom is even if you're achieving it at 65, the whole idea is to do it on your own terms. You want to be able to control what the asset looks like, how I get to invest it, and how much I get to use. If you rely on outside factors like maybe the pension, or maybe you're just relying on government incentives to actually get you through, you're then at the mercy of the government. Now, in this case, Australia is pretty good like that, but how many times could they change the rules from now till the time you retire? And that's what keeps me up at night. It's why I'm so motivated and passionate about making content like this. Despite the fact that you may never use my buyer's agency service, you can still walk away with the mindset shift to go, I'm not gonna rely on someone else to get me out of this. I know no one's coming to save me, so I need to do this stuff myself. Now, the question I have for you is, if you think this is good, fantastic. But if you're watching this and you're here, you're probably wanting great. So traditionally, a lot of our super is invested into the markets, and that's usually done through our super fund that we're with. And you get to choose an aggressive or moderate or low risk tolerance. Now, if you're someone that wants to go and take control, and if you're someone that also really likes property, you may want to go ahead and get the strategy part done. Fantastic. But you also don't know how the numbers work, and the advice that you're getting from people aren't really the ones that have gone out and done this stuff, or they're doing it for people. So let me go and share with you exactly what the numbers look like, how it's different from investing outside of super. So you may have bought a property in your personal name, or you've gone out and invested with someone, but outside of super. There are a couple of differences. Let's go through them, and then we can see what the outcome actually looks like. Now, when you're buying property in super, you need a minimum of 20% deposit, and you can't use the equity from one property as a deposit for the next property. Now, if you want to know how that works when it's outside of super, because you might be watching this and saying, I don't have enough in my super, but I still want to buy property and I've got some equity in my own home, then definitely go check out this video. It's a whiteboard video that breaks down how you can use the equity from one property to replicate and build a portfolio of 5 to 10 properties, despite what the internet trolls tell you. Now, although you can't use equity as deposits, I'm going to get you to watch until the end of this video, because there is a way where you can replicate this and increase the amount that you're going to end up with. So wait till the end of the video, because a lot of this is going to compound, build the foundation, and then we come in with the home run of exactly how you can 5x or 10x your wealth. So assuming that you go ahead and buy a 500K property, a 20% deposit would be $100,000. Your stamp duty plus other fees is probably about $30,000, which means approximately $130,000 is required to be able to purchase the 500K property. Now, let's take a pause. I feel like I need to make this disclaimer every time I make a video about property. It's that you can actually still find property for 500K. I'm not just talking about units and townhouses. I'm talking about actual houses and in good locations. Equally, you can go out and do this with a 300K property or a 400K property where you can find townhouses or units in different areas. Now, this is something that we help with. We go and purchase multiple properties every single week. So if you're thinking about how you actually execute this, book a call. There's a link in the description below to the website, fill in some details, and then book in a call with our team. Now, that's a shameless plug because I know some people will go, hey, this is great, but how do I execute? Because everywhere I look, property prices are a lot higher, or every time I want to buy, I miss out. That's why you want to go and have an expert on your side, because at the end of the day, we do get a lot of off-market deals, and that could save you from getting into the market in 6 months' time versus now. Let's continue. Now here is a couple that we've been helping at the moment, and they're in their 40s, right? Now their balance in their super is 300K collectively. They've done really well to get to this point, but they've also understood that I probably can't get to where I want to be if I continue down the path I'm on right now. Equally, if they stop working or one of them takes time off from their high-paying job, they might find themselves in a position where their super won't grow to the level they need to be to live comfortably. So they came to us and said, look, what can we do when it comes to property? Obviously, we bought property in our own names, but we've never done it in a self-managed super fund. So we walked them through this. We told them exactly what I've just told you, which is 130,000 is about what you need, and that will get you a 500K property. Now, if your super currently is just set up as a normal super fund and you want to transfer it across to a self-managed super fund, I'm going to leave my email in the description box below. Send me an email, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you're looking at doing, and then I'll point you in the right direction with the people that can go and figure this out end to end, and then you can get set up to actually purchase property as well. Now this was the idea. It's 500K, round numbers, that's what we want to do. When we look at the real numbers, they ended up purchasing a property for 502,000 and then another one at 455,000. And in this case, the real value of their assets was about 957,000, and this doesn't take into account purchasing it under market value. So for the purpose of this, to keep it really simple, it's $957,000 is what they control. Obviously they have some debt against those properties, but I'll address the whole debt situation in a little bit. Now, after purchasing the two properties, they still had about $50,000 left over in their SMSF. And the truth is they continue contributing towards it because their employer is still paying some of their super. Now, they also have the option of reducing their taxes by contributing more towards their super, but that's a discussion for them and their accountant. It's not something we advise on. So let's look at some numbers. At a conservative 5% growth, which we know is going to be very conservative given where we think the market's headed and over the long term, not just the short term, in their 50s, which will be in 10 years time, their property portfolio will be 1.558 million, so about 1.56 million. And in their 60s, which is about 20 years from now, it will be worth about 2.54 million. Now, by that point, the houses should actually be paid off. Now, traditionally you'll take out a loan, it's at 30 years, interest plus principal. In this case, it'll get paid off in probably 20 years. Why? Because you have your rents close to a neutral cash flow in the beginning 5 years, then it turns positive, and the extra income you make from there contributes towards paying down the loan. In addition to that, you have your employer paying the super contributions, so you're actually able to pay off your loan a lot faster. I would estimate this number to be closer to about 15 to 18 years, depending on how much income they continue making. So by their 60s, they'll have two assets worth 2.54 million. At 4%, we assume yields will drop from about 5.5% to about 4%, and that would mean that you would get $101,000 every year, which when you compare it to the best case they were in, would be a 3x, given they were making about 29,000 versus 101,000 in this case. Now, we take a pause here, because in this case, there are a couple of differences that need to be addressed. Before I get the hates in the comments, I'm gonna address them straight up. This 101K is not what you keep. You have expenses like property management, you have rates, you have insurances. It makes such a small difference in relative sense. The other thing is the rents are going to continue to grow a lot faster than what I've put here. That's why I ended up going, let's keep it simple. Here's 100K, that's what you're making. We expect capital growth to be a lot faster than 5% as well. Now, in addition to this, when you compare this to the original situation, your money is not growing any faster because what you're doing is you've got your money parked there, so your principal, and then you're making 4% income, and that 4% income is used for lifestyle expenses. So nothing is really being contributed back into the principal. So this year it's 4%, next year's 4%, and it's on the same amount. In this case though, you could go and take the rent, use that as your expenses, but the principal keeps growing. And when you actually compare that over the next following 10 years, because as we know, we all eat organic food now and we can all live a lot longer, we might find ourselves in a position where by the time you're 80, that 4% that you're making sitting in the bank is not enough for you anymore. In this case, you have the properties continuing to move higher without you having to contribute anything extra, and then your rental income continues to grow. Even if that stagnates for the period of 5 or 10 years, you're still going to be better off in that situation, given your capital growth is still increasing. Now, if you've enjoyed the video so far, smash that like button because that's going to push out the video to more people. And I think more people need to understand how super works, how they need to control their money, and how you, as an individual or as a couple, can take ownership of this to go and grow your wealth outside of just your personal name. When you feel like you're out of options because at the moment borrowing capacities are being smashed, interest rates are so high, you're in a position where you think, I'm stuck, I can't do anything, everything's moving past me, I'm stuck, I'm gonna fall behind. You have options. And this is why you can look at something like this as a wealth driver. So here's the bonus. If you don't have the ability to take equity from one property to purchase another property, how do we actually go out and buy more properties in this case? So let's figure out the solution. Now, after 10 years, the two properties would be worth about 1.56. The current debt on that would be about $800,000, which means equity is about 750K. Now, if you decide to go and sell both properties, you'll have costs and you'll have taxes to pay, but the taxes in super are a lot less than what are in your personal. So you'll end up probably around $600,000. If everything goes well, probably 600 to 650, but let's go with a conservative 600K. So you've gone in, so you've bought these properties, held them for 10 years, and then you've sold them after 10 years. You've got 600K in the super account, and you're still so far ahead of if you hadn't gone down this path. But what you're gonna do here is you have the ability to now to use the 600K and purchase 4 more investment properties, okay? Now, before you get so scared, let's break down the numbers here. It's the exact same principle, 130,000 against 4 properties, which is 520,000. You then buy each property at 500K, which would mean $2 million is what you control now. And the 5% yield would mean about 100K, okay? Now, you obviously have debt, so you're not gonna see that 100K straight away. But after 10 years, the properties are now worth 3.2 million. The yield at 4% is about 128,000, and you might still have a little bit more debt left over. So you're probably not having paid off all 4 properties, but that's not so important here. What's important is, yes, your income being generated in the first example is 101K, no debt, but your value is at 2.54 million. In this case, you have income of 128,000 minus about $30,000 towards your debt. Your income probably is going to be about the same, but your value here is 3.2 million. So about 700K more in this example. Now, the other part to this, which is very, very important, is that in the first example, I own 2 properties, which means if I decide I need some of that cash, I sell one of my properties, I've now liquidated 50% of my entire portfolio. It's gone. 1 property out of 2 is 50%. But in this case, if I really needed the money, I've decided I really want to go and splurge on a holiday, or I've got some health concerns, I sell 1 property, I still have 75% of my entire portfolio with me. And that continues to grow. Every time it compounds, every time it grows, it means I have more choice every single year. So in this case, you could continue repeating this process. If you started in your 30s and you do this over 40s, 50s, and 60s, think about how much more wealth you'll actually end up with. And the other part to this is maybe you don't want to take on that risk anymore. As you retire, you go, I'm going to sell everything. And if you decide to sell everything, put all that money in the bank and make your 4% anyway, you'll still be further ahead than having just done that strategy in the first place. And the other thing you could do is you could sell and diversify. Now, you might be in a position where you could sell 2 and pay off the remaining debt on your principal place of residence. Something that we're not talking about here is our desire to really have a bigger house. And every 5 or 10 years we go, well, this isn't my forever home. I want to buy a bigger house. And suddenly you find yourself just going bigger, bigger, bigger. And that usually means bigger debt, and it usually translates to more stress. So in this case, you could get rid of that debt. You could have your own house debt-free, and you could have investments that still grow in capital growth, but also provide you significantly more income than if you had not looked at property at all in your self-managed super fund. So if you're interested in how you can actually execute this, book in a call. I've left the links in the description below. If you've enjoyed all of this, definitely subscribe to the channel because it's alpha like this that needs to go out to more people. And I really want you to benefit from that. So if you don't want to book in a call, don't book in a call. If you want to listen to my voice and you love seeing this face, then definitely subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks, guys.